Well, it's much easier actually to have democracy in jazz because you have fewer people than the millions of people in our country. But from a fundamental standpoint of view, each individual has personal responsibility, and then they have the collective responsibility to the group. So you have your chance to make your own individual statement, but at the most important thing though is what is going to be the best for the group. So I guess I would say that is really once we come up with a consensus of what is the best thing for the country, what is the best thing for what we need, then they could definitely look at jazz as the ideal model for the democratic process. Oh yeah, coming from New Orleans gives us a tremendous advantage over other musicians, especially if you're playing jazz, because we always play and understand that entertainment is the primary goal. So no matter how, if it's highbrow, if it's guttural, whatever the music is, it's going to entertain you. If they're from New Orleans, the cats are going to be grooving and swinging and having a good time. So from that standpoint alone, more importantly, or at least I should say equally as important, would be the idea of playing melodies and melodic phrases as opposed to just trying to string together a bunch of licks. Whenever you hear a guy from New Orleans, you can always tell. And again, if they're playing something modern or some blues, something straight up, it's just something about hearing that brass band and hearing the way Louis Armstrong played, and it's the gumbo and the shrimp sandwiches and the etouffee. And sometimes we'll be on a gig and maybe it's an off night. We got 15 or 20 people in the club, and the guys in the band want to kind of take off, and they just say, well, ain't nobody here anyway. And I often think back, as all my brothers I'm sure will tell you, about my dad playing at Lou and Charlie's. 6 guys on the bandstand, 8 or 10 people in the audience, and it was his chance to play. And he would play from the first note to the last with a certain level of seriousness. So that's the approach that we take. If it's 5 people, 5,000 people, 500, whatever it is, for me, you got to have the same level of intensity and purpose. And that's the measure of the man at the end of the day and at the end of the career. Yeah, in terms of music, being a Marcellus is not so much of a big deal to me. But as far as my generation, being an American, and those responsibilities, being a black male, my mother never emphasized music. She always emphasized education, making intelligent decisions, and being creative. So it kind of worked out that we decided to play music. But my parents let us know they rode in the back of the bus, and that was not an enjoyable position to be in. And they had their own ways that they rebelled, but a lot had changed from the 40s, the 50s when they were growing up to the late 60s, early 70s when we were growing up. But then again, a lot hadn't changed, and a lot still hasn't changed. So I would say from that standpoint of view, yeah, we've always viewed that we had a certain responsibility, and we take it fairly seriously. I don't know what Charlie Parker, really felt about Louis Armstrong. I haven't read that he thought of him as a buffoon, or we've heard other people say he was timing and cheesing and these other various things. But clearly, the further you get away from the plantation and having to pick cotton in the South, the further you get away from the 1800s, the less you really have. You have more of an idealistic view of what that experience was than a realistic view. But what jazz really is, and the reason why I think it came from New Orleans primarily, is about how do you negotiate your circumstances. And the guys in the South had a very tricky situation that they had to figure out how to work on. On the plantation, it was all about how are we going to get along. What are the politics around plantation life? That's how you find the guys in the South who really could figure out all these different things and how people could work together with these various obstacles, they came up with this music, and the music always rises above that. You listen to that Louis Armstrong music, you never would think, man, this guy he was picking cotton. Or you hear these guys, unless there is a lyric that makes a specific reference to work, the music is just on another plane. And that's really the great thing, is that no matter what the struggles were, these guys created a music that rose above all of it. And when you hear it, you can hear it. It's high-minded music. It's because guys are like, no, we could be down here. This is where folks want us to be, but I tell you what, no. And that was the greatness of Louis Armstrong. He said, this is what you want me to be? I'm not going to be that. And not only am I not going to be it, I'm going to be something so great and so well studied that you're going to know.